In 2015, the world watched as a modern European nation edged dangerously close to a total financial breakdown. Banks locked their doors. ATMs blinked with error messages as withdrawals were limited to just a few euros a day. Retirees stood in long, silent lines, hoping their pensions hadn't been frozen overnight. And the very country that once shaped Western civilization, the birthplace of democracy, political philosophy, and organized currency, suddenly found itself bargaining for survival with global lenders. This wasn't a story from a dusty history book. This was Greece, a member of the European Union, operating inside the Eurozone, protected by one of the strongest currencies on Earth. Yet somehow, it stood on the edge of default, looking less like a modern state and more like an exhausted empire nearing collapse. So, what went wrong? How does a developed nation backed by powerful institutions and tied to the same currency as Germany and France spiral into crisis after crisis, bailout after bailout? And more importantly, why should you care, even if you've never been to Athens or glimpsed the Parthenon? Because Greece's fall wasn't just a national disaster. It was a global warning, a blueprint of how debt can quietly dismantle sovereignty. Let's rewind. Greece did not fall in a single moment. It eroded. It dimmed. It slowly loosened the threads that once held its people together. When you study its final centuries, you don't see a dramatic explosion. You see an empire forgetting the very virtues that once made it powerful. Its decline was not a thunderclap. It was a whisper that grew louder over generations. The philosophers had warned of this, but by the time their words mattered, Greece had already begun to drift from its center. The society that once celebrated discipline and unity gradually shifted toward comfort, excess, and spectacle. Public life stopped revolving around purpose and began revolving around pleasure. Citizens who were once fiercely invested in their city's future became distracted, then indifferent, then apathetic. The conversations of the agora changed. The ambitions of young men changed. The things families taught their children changed. A culture that had been built on logic, courage, and civic duty was gradually replaced by one that worshipped convenience. The warning signs were subtle at first. Leaders indulged in flattery instead of honesty. Laws weakened because enforcing them was unpopular. People demanded more rights but rejected the obligations that came with those rights. Entertainment became louder than wisdom. Citizens grew impatient with restraint and bored with virtue. What once required effort, they now expected to be effortless. What once required sacrifice, they now believed should be handed to them. And while these internal shifts occurred, the outside world watched. Enemies that Greece once intimidated began observing a nation too distracted to defend itself. A people too divided to unite. A government too hesitant to act with discipline. Slowly, the pillars of society, family, education, duty, order eroded, not because they were forcibly removed, but because they were neglected. By the time Greece faced external threats, the strength it once possessed wasn't there. Its armies lacked resolve, its leaders lacked clarity, and its citizens lacked the unity required for survival. Greece did not collapse from invasion alone. It collapsed because it no longer remembered how to stand. When a civilization forgets the values that raised it from dust to greatness, decline is inevitable. Greece's tragedy is that the same qualities that once set it apart, discipline, moderation, civic responsibility, became the very things people dismissed as outdated. They celebrated progress while dismantling its foundations. They embraced novelty while abandoning tradition. In their eagerness to appear modern, they lost the wisdom that had sustained them. The cultural atmosphere became one of indulgence disguised as freedom. Citizens insisted they were liberating themselves from old constraints, yet what they truly abandoned was structure. They wanted the rewards of a strong society without the effort required to maintain it. They demanded more choices but rejected the responsibility those choices came with. And slowly, the appetite for easy living replaced the appetite for excellence. As the moral fabric loosened, so did social order. Families weakened, education softened. Discipline became negotiable. Children grew up in a world where boundaries blurred, expectations lowered, and personal desires replaced common good. The intellectual class debated endlessly while accomplishing little. The political class argued loudly while solving nothing. The citizens complained vigorously while contributing even less. Everyone had an opinion. Few had a solution. What made Greece exceptional became diluted. The common identity that once unified the nation fractured into competing groups, each demanding its own version of truth, each prioritizing its own comfort over collective survival. National pride turned into performance rather than purpose. Rituals continued, but their meaning evaporated. By the time reform was needed, no one had the discipline to pursue it. By the time unity was essential, no one wanted to compromise. By the time courage was required, no one wished to sacrifice. What remained was a hollow version of the civilization that had once shaped the world. This is how a nation decays not instantly, but gradually. Not through one catastrophic event, but through countless small concessions. And every concession chipped away at the greatness Greece once embodied. The final chapters of Greece teach a lesson every society eventually confronts. No civilization is defeated externally until it first collapses internally. The armies that later entered Greek lands did not conquer a strong nation. They conquered a tired one, a distracted one, a divided one. Greece had surrendered its strength long before its borders fell. When the moment of crisis arrived, the people who once stood confidently shoulder to shoulder no longer trusted one another. Their loyalty to the nation had been replaced by loyalty to personal gain. Their reverence for sacrifice had been replaced by fear of discomfort. Their commitment to duty had been replaced by endless self-interest. And so, when Greece needed unity, courage, and discipline most, it found none. History shows that decline never announces itself dramatically. It begins quietly, in the weakening of families, in the erosion of character, in the fading of shared purpose. Greece's collapse proves that a civilization's greatest enemy is not the sword, it is complacency. It is the belief that greatness is permanent. It is the assumption that past achievements guarantee future stability. The truth is harsh. No society remains powerful when its people grow more passionate about distractions than responsibilities. No nation remains strong when its citizens prefer pleasure to duty. And no civilization survives when it forgets the values that once made it exceptional. Greece fell because it drifted from its core slowly, subtly, fatally. It fell because it traded its soul for comfort. It fell because it believed it could enjoy the privileges of strength without the effort that strength requires. And once a society loses its will to remain strong, it has already chosen the path to collapse. The story of Greece is not just a historical account. It is a mirror. It reflects what happens when a people abandon discipline, lose their moral compass, and allow comfort to override purpose. It is a warning written across centuries. Greatness is not inherited. It is maintained. And if a nation forgets this, its fall becomes only a matter of time. The downfall of Greece wasn't a dramatic ancient tragedy, no invaders storming shores, no citadels burning, no empires clashing. But in reality, it was a quiet forfeiture of control, a modern surrender disguised as policy. And what makes it chilling is that it unfolded within a global economy that promised stability, oversight, and protection from exactly this kind of unraveling. History may not repeat itself, but it whispers warnings if you know how to listen. And when you watch a developed nation lose its footing overnight, you begin to understand how delicate economic independence truly is. If this shifted your perspective, hit subscribe. The patterns are there, and I'll help you see them before they appear.